Hi, my name is Musudeen Harrell. I am the host of Live Courageous podcast. Today, we have a very exciting topic, and it's a trending topic, but I would like to welcome you here first. And again, for the ones that have been following this podcast, thank you for continuing to watch the podcast. The topic today is anxiety, which has been trending, and it continues to trend. According to the Anxiety Depression Association of America, we have general anxiety disorder, GAD, 6.8 million adults, or 3.1 of U.S. population, yet only 43.2% of individuals are receiving treatment. And this can coincide with depression. So this is very serious, as we know. But again, we're going to identify some anxieties, and there are multiple types of anxieties, but I'm just going to touch base on two, which I already said, the general anxiety disorder, and you also have social anxiety. So again, anxiety, we get it from everywhere. The social media, the uncertainty of the world. Every time you turn on the news, you see something that's happening, and you try to figure out, how does that affect me? It does affect you in a major way, because whatever goes in your subconscious mind, you're going to think about it. And once you think about it, you formulate your own story in your head, which brings up to anxiety. Again, what we're going to identify some of the things that we ourselves, I would say, bring upon ourselves in terms of anxiety. And sometimes it is family dynamic, or maybe you had already a past experience that brings up the anxiety. So again, this is an individual struggle, and it's also culture, okay? So whatever you are learning from whoever that may be can cause anxiety. So one of the things that we're going to talk about, again, the question is, how do you face courageously anxiety? How do you focus and move past that? So we're going to talk about this. I have a personal story in terms of social anxiety, which I really didn't identify it as social anxiety until later on in my life. I grew up partly in Africa, 8 years, and so I had a thick accent. So when I came to the United States, again, of course, because of my language barrier, and people would make fun of me, I used to like not want to say the things I'm thinking of. And that leads on into young adulthood. So things that were bothering me, or things that I wanted to say out loud, even though I knew this is how I felt, I couldn't say that in terms of social gatherings. So I held it in for so many years, and I was told I even had a social awkwardness, or I didn't know when to express things like laugh at a certain time or things like that. And so that because of that, that was programmed in my mind. And so I kept that. And so that was, every time I go out with people in the public, I wouldn't say much. And so again, I didn't realize that was anxiety, because again, you do have those symptoms, which is bubbly stomach, or just feel nauseated, or just hands sweating, or, just feel weird. And that was anxiety, until I've learned more about anxiety. And this is what people face on the normal day to day. And so with that said, you want to identify what anxiety looks like to you. And again, there's different types of anxiety. And then the general anxiety, that usually takes about 6 months to diagnose. So it's not something that just bothers you one time and you get over it. Yes, that's maybe anxiousness and possibly anxiety, but for the diagnosis to stick, it will be something that's chronic. You've had it for longer than 6 months. So you want to identify those things. And again, like I said, my story was from when I was a youth, teenage years, and then into young adult, and even in my older age, And so because of that, that had hindered me for so long, even in my business. Having the business that I have, I'm dealing with different departmental governing agencies. And because I've had that thought process, or whatever someone had put in my mind, that, oh, you cannot speak well, or you cannot deliver information the right way, or you just different, however that situation was, I would not address the things that came upon. Some things were really not justice or even correct, but because I wouldn't speak up, I let the upper people get the upper hand. Because again, I didn't know if it was social awkward to say whatever that thought process was in my head, and that will literally enable you to move forward. And so, because of this experience, and now I've identified what that looks like, I have stretched myself. And as a matter of fact, just recently, just this year, starting last year, we started a podcast, and that was my number one way to get out there and stretch myself and open up. And then just recently, I joined the John Maxwell team as a public speaker. And so I'm so excited to just continue to stretch. Whatever was trying to hold me down at one time is not going to do that anymore. And this is what I'm going to teach you. And hopefully this can be practical information for you to move forward, especially if you have that type of anxiety. So again, when we're talking about anxiety, we talked about the symptoms. You'll have your heart racing, sleepless nights. Like I said, sometimes you wouldn't want to eat because you feel just that anxiousness. You can't even function correctly. And because those all are initial symptoms, and eventually it can go be physical symptoms. And if you go into the physical symptoms, it can cause possibly death, because if you don't handle the anxiety, and now you go into chronic physical conditions, and eventually it will lead to your death. So we want to identify what anxiety looks like for you. And so with that said, by taking the first step to name that thing, whatever that thing is, that is your way to freedom. And again, anxiety is not the enemy, but it is a warning signal. And again, it can be a yellow light. When you hit the red light, you really need to go for it. And again, stretching into new activities. It's not going to be easy, but once you've identified whatever that anxiety is, then you can take step two. What do I need to combat this feeling, this situation, or whatever that situation is? One of the things that you will want to do is to get a mentor, or even just someone to talk to. By you finding out, okay, this is my problem, I need someone to talk to so I can make sure this is what I'm feeling. And again, it is normal. We are normal human beings. This is what we deal with. And again, once you talk to that individual, maybe you need professional help. So by you diving into those components, that is a way to move forward and take care of whatever the situation is in your life. One of the stories I think about most likely, again, I said anxiety is a human nature, okay? It is not abnormal to feel this way. David in the Bible, as everyone knows, I am a woman of faith. David in the Bible, he lists so many anxiety situations, especially in the book of Psalms. If you go through, read the book of Psalms, you will see he had situations of being anxious. And he thought of these things and he wrote them out in the Bible. He was running from his son. He was running from Saul. He had anxious moments, but he always had a way to pivot. When he pivoted, he went to Jesus. He went to God the Father. And so because of that, he was able to combat that anxiety. Again, I did mention some people here on planet Earth that you can go to, which is the mentor or your counselor or your psychiatrist. But also you can go to the Word of God and it will tell you how to combat anxiety. And again, only the Holy Spirit can help you with that. One of the three things I do want to focus on right now, in order for it to be practical in your life, you want to know that you have to pivot. You have to pause first. You have to pause. When you feel like you have that anxiety, name it. I said that before. Take deep breaths. When you breathe in and you breathe out, that's a form of getting the toxins out and bringing the relief back in. So when you take deep breaths, that helps also with your anxiety. The second thing is to process it. By processing, what does it look like? Who do I need to bring in my corner? We talked about resources last week. Who is my resource that I can go to? Confidentiality, confidential, someone that can hold whatever you say serious and then try to navigate you through these things. And then you want to pivot. In terms of pivoting, you take one small step at a time. Again, that is a courageous move. Even while you're anxious, do something. Don't just sit still. I'd like to tell you another story. I'm reading a book. There was a big giant. You know, we have big giant. This anxiety is a big giant. There was a big giant that lived in a seclusion area, had a wonderful garden, and the little children around the neighborhood wanted to come and play in his garden. But this giant was very, very mean and furious, just not a nice guy. So the children jumped over the fence to try to get into his garden. They played in the garden. They left. The guy came home, saw that his garden was being tampered with. So he put up more barriers so the kids will not come to his garden. They came back. This time he was there when he came back. And so there was a little boy that could not jump over this barrier. It was just too much for him to jump over. He's pretty feeble, you know. So the little boy stood his ground. The giant came out of his home. The other kids ran away. The little boy stood there. He says, I'm going to face this giant today. And so when he stood there and said that, this giant came and opened his arms and received him. And this little boy became brave and courageous during that time. So the giant ended up welcoming the other kids to come back and play in the garden. So again, this was springtime. So he had a beautiful garden, by the way. So now it's winter time. No one came to play because it's wintertime. It's cold outside. So it became spring again. But on the outside, everyone was experiencing spring. But this giant, he would look through the window. He still seen the fog. He wasn't experiencing spring because the children hadn't been back. So finally, the little boy, he hadn't been there for so long because the giant was kind of just met him that time and hadn't come back. So the little boy came to the giant's garden again. No sooner the little boy jumped into the garden, he had spring come back. It started being, the flowers were blossoming. Everything looks pretty again because this little boy has brought life to this giant. Then the giant became ill, and the giant ended up dying. But this little boy had touched this giant's life. And so because of his bravery, because he wasn't afraid, he got over his anxiety, and he was able to help this gentleman. And this gentleman lived a productive life after he met this little boy. So it was a two-way street. So I wanted to share that because, again, anxiety is a giant. But we have to face the giant head off. Look the giant in the eye and tell him you can't defeat me. So one thing I would like to say, moving forth, courage is moving while it whispers in the background. Anxiety is going to whisper in your background. But how are we going to impact and move forward and defeat it? For you listening today, where has anxiety showed up in your life? That's a question to think about. Write it down this week. Practice at least 3 of the things I've said, which is pause, process, and pivot. You will find the courage grows when you take one step at a time. Again, anxiety may be trending, but it doesn't have to define who you are. Courage isn't avoid anxiety. It's facing it head on with wisdom, grace, and resilience. We are going to do another topic next week. Since I'm a leader, we're going to talk about imposed leadership syndrome. And again, come and visit me next week. Thank you for listening. Live courageous. Thank you.